When Melinda went away for a week with her friends, she left George at home alone. Or so he thought. When he sent her a selfie from the bedroom, Melinda immediately noticed something odd about the photo. When he saw it, he tried to contact him as soon as possible. George had no idea what he had just done. He hadn't even looked at the photo before sending it. Everyone was on Melinda's side. George had blushed when he saw the messages and the picture he had sent. "What's that under our bed?" Melinda asked. What was the man hiding that he didn't want his girlfriend to know? Before we start, can we get this video to 1,000 likes? Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. For the first time since they met, they would spend a week apart from each other. Lately, the fights have been more and more frequent, so they thought maybe some time was what they needed. Melinda went on her trip and left George at home alone. But as the journey approached, he was behaving strangely. Could it be that he wasn't ready to sit on his own? Or was it something more than that? She wasn't sure, but she had to make the trip. The next day, she left a little worried. A little time away might have been good, and things would have been better on the way back. So he hoped. The original plan was to have no contact during the trip. But Melinda had a desire to send a message to George and just see his face, in the hope that he would be willing to send her at least one photo. To my pleasant surprise, George was open to texting too. He had missed his girl. Can these few days away bring the couple back to how they used to be? Melinda was jumping for joy. The messages continued for a couple of days. George sent her many pictures, but without showing his face. Melinda asked him nicely and jokingly to send her some, and he didn't spoil the favor. He was sending selfies from all over the house, and as he walked he was taking pictures without paying much attention. Melinda looked at pictures of her and felt how lucky she is to have such a man. Everything was perfect when in one selfie in the bedroom she felt the earth disappear from under her feet. Melinda looked at the photo several times to confirm what she had seen at first. Something was coming out of the bed, and now he was worried what it was. It could have been anything, and he tried to let it go. She took a few deep breaths, but when she asked her boyfriend to tell her what he saw, he stopped responding to her messages. He didn't even answer the calls. She knew something was up and her anxiety grew. What was George hiding from her? One day before Melinda's departure, George received some strange messages. It certainly wasn't what he had hoped for just before his girlfriend's journey began. He tried not to show the messages for fear of Melinda finding out. To his surprise, she said nothing and continued her preparation. During the first few days at home, George wanted to forget the messages he received. He wanted to get them out of his mind. He didn't want to answer, and it was wrong of him. When after a few days, Melinda started contacting him, he felt a sense of relief. It was just what was needed. That meant she missed him at least a little. Communicating with Melinda had worked wonders. He had brought George back and was perfectly happy with what was happening. During the night, George was awakened by a loud knock on the front door. He got out of bed and thought, could it be her? He went down the stairs and after taking a deep breath, opened the door. To his great surprise, no one was there. Maybe he had imagined it, or maybe it was some tricks of the little kids playing in the neighborhood. Maybe it was a dream. He climbed the stairs again and went to the room to sleep. In the morning, he woke up full of energy and without any worries. He wasn't thinking about what had happened the night before. The first message of the day was from Melinda, and that was a great feeling. All morning, he communicated with her. His relationship seemed to go from good to better, but he had no idea what would happen next. Would his happy mood change? Ever since they started communicating again, Melinda has been sending him lots of vacation pictures. The pictures were very nice, and he got a little jealous. He didn't have as much fun at home alone as she did. Melinda asked George to send her some pictures too. He wanted to see a little of his face, even if he was alone in the house. George didn't spoil her. He decided to have a little fun with it too. He started taking some selfies from around the house and sending them to his girlfriend. Once he was done taking the photos, he sent them all together to Melinda and lay down in front of the TV. He had a lot of fun and took a lot of pictures. He didn't even look at them before sending them, and that might have been his fault. Then he waited for Melinda to respond and send him some funny or happy comment. He certainly wasn't prepared for the messages he would receive in response to the photos he sent. Melinda had focused on one particular photo. the one who had dragged her boyfriend out of the bedroom. He seemed very concerned about what he had seen. When George saw her messages, he turned to his cell phone to look at the picture she was telling him about. He knew what the problem was. In the background of the picture, something was coming out from under the bed. It looked like wool, and now George was even more worried. He was afraid that someone was in the house with him. He left the phone on the table and stood up from the sofa, his legs shaking. As he climbed the stairs to the bedroom, he began to think. He wondered if all his fears had been proven correct. Maybe he was a bit unreasonable, and it was nothing? He remembered the messages he had received before Melinda's trip. The knock on the door in the middle of the night before. The open window when he came back into the room. It all started to make sense. He had to be here. Rather, it was inside the house. George quietly climbed the stairs and walked down the hall. He opened the bedroom door and didn't see the hair in the picture. Something mysterious was going on. His heart pounded when he looked under the bed. There was nothing. Nothing that could explain what he and Melinda had seen in the photo. But they were right. He had to figure out where he was. It wasn't under the bed, but where was it? He began to search the entire room. The wardrobes, behind the doors, even in the drawers. He looked everywhere for a sign, but found none. As he searched, he heard the phone downstairs. It was Melinda calling, as she was agitated and wanted to contact him. So he headed for the stairs. George was running down the stairs to get the phone, but stopped short. Someone else had picked up their phone and was talking to Melinda. His intuition was right. There was actually someone with him, and now he was staring at him. Shortly before George met Melinda, he was dating another girl named Tamika. She was a pretty girl, but her character didn't match George's. Eventually, he broke up with her and then met her Melinda. But the story with this girl would not end so easily. Tamika had never forgiven George or Melinda. She was still in love with him, and for years after her breakup, she wanted them to get back together. She had refused to leave him alone. With George having to deal with her many times after the split, he actually had to go to a lawyer to get distance from Tamika because she wouldn't leave him alone. He had tried to hide it from Melinda, but things didn't go as planned. Tamika was in the living room at the time talking to Melinda, telling her to stay away from George. George managed to grab the phone from her hands and asked her to leave the house immediately. He told her he would call the police. Luckily, Tamika agreed, but told him that she would come back to be together forever. She pointed out to him that they are meant to be together. When Tamika left, George quickly called Melinda and told her everything. He told her that Tamika was at home and the distances she had traveled. Melinda was shocked at all that her boyfriend had hidden from her. He knew a little about Tamika, but he didn't know everything that had happened in the past. Eventually, the couple decided to move to another state. It looked like this would be the end of Tamika, as she didn't have the money to follow them there. There were no other concerns. At least, they were sure that from now on things would go well in their relationship. Apart from Tamika, the whole holiday experience went very well. The couple renewed and were happier than ever. In fact, they were planning their wedding.